Hello, thank you for checking out A1 Math, and today we're looking at writing geometric sequences. We want to write them in the explicit rule and the recursive rule. And the explicit rule, if you remember from arithmetic sequence, is when you want to look for a certain term, you plug that term in. The recursive rule is when you have to multiply, or in this case for geometric, multiply that same number again and again and again to find what number term you're looking for. But today, all we want to do is just write the rule. Okay? So we're going to find two numbers. You're going to find the first number in the sequence, and you're going to find the common ratio. And you're just going to write them in. So for the explicit rule, and this is similar to what we did in the previous video, but the explicit rule, we'll put the first term here and put the common ratio here. And in the previous one, we plugged in n, but we're not even going to plug that in. We're just going to have it plug in the first term and the common ratio, and that's it. Same thing with the recursive rule. With the recursive rule, it says f1 is given, so you'll write what's given. F1 is that first term, and then you'll just plug in the common ratio on the end, and everything else stays the same. So let's take a look at a couple examples. Okay, so here we have a word problem here, but it's not really. It's giving you an example of a geometric sequence. So what we're going to do is write the recursive rule and the explicit rule. So it says here, makers of Japanese swords in the 1400s repeatedly folded and hammered the metal to form layers. The folding process increased the strength of the sword. Says the table shows how the numbers of layers depend on the number of folds. So what it's saying is, if you look at the table, it's saying that for every fold, like one fold, you had um, 2 layers, and then 2 folds is 4 layers, and 3 folds is 8 layers, and so forth and so on, and you get a geometric sequence. Here's the geometric sequence here. Okay, so but like I said before, all you need to do is find two things. You need to find the first term and the common ratio. Okay, so I'm gonna zoom in here, and the first term in the geometric sequence here is 2. So I'm gonna put f of 1 is equal to 2. And now I'm going to find the common ratio. Same thing we did before. Take the second term divided by the first. So you got 4 divided by 2, and that's going to get you 2. So we're almost there now. All we got to do is take these two numbers and plug them into the formulas. So we're going to first plug it into the recursive. Okay? So to the recursive, for f of 1, I'm going to change colors here. F of 1, what is f of 1? F of 1 is 2. Okay, in the second part of the recursive here, you're going to write everything exactly the same, but the end you're going to multiply by that common ratio, which is 2. All right, now we're going to do the explicit, and we've done the explicit before, but we're not going to plug in n. So I'm just going to write f of n, okay, and f of 1, what's f of 1? F of 1 is 2, so I'm going to put 2 here, and the common ratio. The common ratio also is 2, so I'll put that there, and I'm going to leave the n minus 1. Did it twice. N minus 1. And that's it. We're done. We're just writing the recursive rule and writing the explicit rule. Okay, let's take a look at another example. Okay, so in this next example, they didn't even give you any type of word problems with swords or anything here. All they want to know is, in this sequence, can we write the recursive and explicit form? And this is the explicit over here. Okay, so the two numbers we need the first term and we need the common ratio. So the first term, which is f of 1, It's just the first number in the sequence. And remember, we're looking here. F of 1 is 5. And the next thing we're going to do is find the common ratio. And the common ratio will be the second term, in this case 15, divided by the first term, which is 5. And you get 3. So all I'm going to do is take those two numbers and plug them in. So for my recursive rule, I'm going to change colors again. What is f of 1? So we're going to begin with f of 1. F of 1 is, again, 5. Now I'm going to write out everything else. And I don't know why this is written on here twice, but we'll write out everything else. F of n is equal to f of n minus 1 times 5, times 3, which is the common ratio. And this f of n minus 1 just means the previous term. Okay? But that's the recursive rule. Now we're going to do the explicit rule. The explicit rule, change the colors again. All right, we'll type write f of n is equal to the first term, which is 5, times the common ratio. I'm going to put it in parentheses. The common ratio number is 3. If we raise it to the n minus 1, just put that in parentheses too. And that's the explicit rule. We wrote the recursive and the explicit. And that's pretty much it. Okay, take a look at these two examples and see if you can find, or see if you can write the recursive rule and the explicit rule. Okay, this should be what you get for 5 and 6. Okay, it gives us our recursive rule here. Tell us the first term, f of 1 is equal to 7, and then f of n is equal to f of n minus 1 times 2. And I didn't have y'all write this part, but it just means that n has to be greater than or equal to 2. Okay, and then you have the explicit rule when you have the first term, which is 7, and the common ratio, which is 2, and then n minus 1. Okay, in number 6, the first term is 128, and writing the explicit rule, put the common ratio, in this case, which is 0.25. We'll put that on the end here. So you got 0.25 as your common ratio. And then with the explicit rule, you have the first term and the common ratio. Okay, so here's another example of writing the recursive and explicit rule for geometric sequence here. And this one's already worked out, but what they done here is they want to show uh, the numeric and the algebraic for the same thing. So for example, it gives us the sequence here, 624, 96, 384, and 1536. And they said, what's the common ratio? Well, the common ratio is 4. And then when you get ready to write the explicit rule here, it says it's writing it in numbers, where you plug in your common ratio and your first term and all of that. Over here on the right, it has it algebraically. It's saying the first term, algebraically, number 6 is f of 1. And then the next term is f of 2. And the next term is f of 3. The next term is f of 4, and so on. And then it gives you the formula for the explicit rule and the recursive rule. But what I want you to do is the same thing we've been doing. Just write the recursive rule and the explicit rule. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and work this one out. So the first thing I would do is find the first term, which is f of 1. And f of 1 is the first term, which is 6. And then I'm going to find my common ratio. And my common ratio is 24 divided by 6, which is 4. I'm going to plug those into the formula here. Alright, so I'm going to plug in the first term, which is 6. So I'm going to write f of 1. I'm going to change colors. F of 1 is equal to 6. And then for the next term here, or the next part of the recursive rule, I'm going to say f of n is equal to f of n minus 1 times the common ratio, which in this case is 4. Alright, now I'm going to do the explicit rule. Start off with f of n, put in the first term. The first term was 6 times r, which is our common ratio of 4. I'm going to put it in parentheses and raise it to n minus 1. And that's it. Writing the explicit and recursive rule. Okay, I'm going to show you one more example here. Alright, I have my sequence over here, 4, 12, 36, 108, and 324. And I'm going to write the first term. What is f of 1? F of 1 is 4. And then the common ratio. The common ratio is equal to 12 divided by 4, which is 3. Okay, and I'm just going to write those in for the recursive rule. F of 1 is equal to 4. F of n is equal to f of n minus 1 times 3. Now I'm going to do the explicit rule. F of n is equal to f of 1, which is 4, times the common ratio, which is 3, raised to the n minus 1. And that's it. Alright, take a look at number 9 here and see if you can write the recursive rule and the explicit rule for this one. Okay, so this should be what you get for number 9, okay? And it's got all this extra stuff here, but like I said, this is pretty much the same. All of this over here. Uh, it's just showing you the algebraic representation. What I want you to be able to do is to write it and write the recursive rule with the common ratio, which is 2, and the first term, which is 6. So you got 6 and 2 in here. And then write the explicit rule with the same thing. You got the first term, and you got the common ratio. So if you write that, that's what I'm looking for here. Okay, and that is writing a geometric sequence for the recursive and the explicit rule. I want to thank you for checking out A1 Math. Have a nice day.